Have you ever asked yourself, why does grief hurt so much? As a grief therapist, I have so many people ask me that question. Why does grief hurt so much? If you're here, you're probably feeling it, that deep, unshakable ache that comes with loss. Maybe it feels like your heart is breaking in a million pieces and it's shattering all over. Or there's this emptiness that you can't explain. Let me say this, your pain is valid. Grief hurts so much because it reflects something profound, the love and connection we've lost. My name's Linda Falasco, and I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I work as a trauma and grief therapist. We're going to unpack in this video why grief is so painful and how that pain is a testament to the bond you'll always carry with your loved one. So let's dive right into the heart of it. Why does grief feel like this? Why does it touch every part of our being? Our minds, our bodies, our souls, even socially it affects us. Well, grief stems from the loss of someone or something so deeply and meaningful to us. It's just not about their physical absence. It's about the connection that we shared, the conversations, the routines, the moments that gave our life meaning. And when that connection is broken, it can feel like a piece of us is missing, leaving behind a void that's so hard to comprehend. I know for me, when I first lost my brother Jeff 30 years ago, I felt like there was a hole in my heart. And I would tell people that it felt physically like I had a hole in my heart that would not close. It felt like it was never going to heal. And I know many of you probably have experienced similar physical pains after a loss. We also have emotional pain, such as sadness, anger, guilt, anxiety, confusion, and it can feel so overwhelming and unpredictable. One moment, you might find yourself crying uncontrollably, and the next, you're angry at the world or your loved one for leaving you. Guilt can creep in, making you question if you did enough, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, did you say the right things? And then there's all this disorienting confusion that could happen, feeling like you're trying to navigate a world that no longer feels the same to you. These emotions aren't a sign of weakness or failure. They're natural and necessary. They're your mind's way of processing the enormity of the loss and trying to make sense of the reality without your loved one in it. Grief is the heart's way of saying, this mattered, they mattered. Allowing yourself to feel these emotions instead of suppressing them by staying busy or not talking about them is an important part of healing. Grief is a mental and emotional adjustment. It's a journey of moving through the pain while honoring what you've lost. It's messy, it's painful, and it's deeply human to have these experiences and feelings. There's also the physical part. Like I had said earlier, how I felt that hole in my heart. It's not just something you feel emotionally. It's something that your body feels too. Maybe it's the heaviness in your chest. Maybe it's your heart physically reacting, like the absence of your loved one, like that hole, or the constant fatigue or body aches. It's your body working overtime to cope with stress and emotional turmoil. You might notice a lump in your throat that won't go away, or a choking sensation, chin headaches that seem to linger, stomach aches. Some people may have a weakened immune system because grief triggers the same stress response in the brain as physical injuries. And I explain to a lot of my clients that when they're going through so much emotional pain, that they need to pay attention to the physical aspects as well, especially their immune system, because when you are fighting these emotions and these physical feelings that you're having, your immune system can become weakened, and now you're going to be more susceptible to viruses and colds. So it's so important to take care of yourself and to pay attention. Your body and your mind are mourning together. They're trying to find balance in the midst of this loss that you are going through. So why is grief so intense? Well, grief isn't just about missing someone. It's about the profound changes that their absence creates in your life. So let's look at 3 reasons why grief feels so intense and overwhelming. The first is love and attachment. The intensity of your grief reflects the depth of your love and attachment. When we deeply connect with someone, they become a part of us, shaping our sense of ourself and the world around us. Their presence isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, and even spiritual. Our bonds with our loved ones influence our routines, our memories, and even our future and our dreams. And we come to rely on them for comfort, joy, companionship. And it creates this intricate web of shared experiences and expectations. And when they're no longer there, it's not just that physical absence that we grieve, it's the loss of everything they've represented in our lives. This void feels unbearable because of the role that they played in our identity, in our hopes, in our dreams, and our sense of belonging. Grief, in its essence, is love that no longer has a place to go. I'm sure many of you have heard that saying before, and it's true. The longing to share moments with them, to hear their voice, to feel their presence, all of this remains even when they're gone. This unfulfilled love creates a sense of emptiness that can feel so overwhelming. Attachment plays a significant role in this intensity because as humans, we're wired for connection. We are social beings. And when we lose someone that we're deeply attached to, it disrupts that secure foundation that we've built around that relationship. It's not just the absence that we're feeling. It's the sudden disconnection from the stability and trust and the safety that they brought into our lives. Grief can also be amplified by the future and the dreams and the plans that were tied to that person that we lost. We grieve not just for who they were, but for the future that we imagined with them. Their absence leaves us grappling with the life that we thought that we would have with them, making the loss even more profound. This is why grief can feel so all-consuming. It's a reflection of how much that person mattered and how much they shaped our lives. While grief is painful in itself, it's also a profound reminder of the love we shared. And over time, it can help us find meaning and carry their memory forward as we are moving forward in our grief. The second reason that grief feels so intense is because of the uncertainty and change that we experience. Loss also disrupts our sense of safety, stability, and identity. And when someone or something so central to your life is gone, that foundation that you've built your world upon suddenly feels unstable. And the disruption of it forces you into a territory that you never were in before, where everything feels uncertain and unfamiliar, and it's amplifying the pain of grief. And grief demands that you adjust to a life you did not choose, you weren't prepared for, you were not ready for. Routines that once gave you comfort and structure are no longer the same. Shared moments, whether they're mundane or meaningful, are so empty now. For example, maybe a morning coffee shared with a loved one or a weekly phone call may now serve as this painful reminder of what's been lost. And I've had clients talk about these things, and I've had one that sticks out of the weekly phone call. They would talk to their brother every week on Sundays at 6:00. And after that loss, Sundays were very difficult for them. These changes extend to every corner of our life, making even the simplest tasks feel daunting as you attempt to reconfigure your world. The loss also shifts your roles and responsibilities. You may find yourself taking on duties that were once shared or your loved one was responsible for, such as maybe parenting. You shared that together. Financial management, or even just emotional support with family or your community. This shift in roles can feel very overwhelming especially when it's layered with the emotional weight of loss. The process of learning how to navigate these new responsibilities while at the same time grieving can feel impossible. Grief challenges your own sense of identity. So much of who we are is tied to our relationships and our roles. And when someone significant is gone, or when a life-altering change occurs, it can leave you questioning who you are without that person or without that aspect in your life. If you were a partner or a caregiver or a sibling or a best friend, you may be unsure of, well, where do I fit now? How do I fit into this world? Uncertainty compounds the intensity of grief because humans crave stability and predictability. And when loss throws everything into question, your plans, your relationships, even your sense of safety, it can feel like the ground has been pulled out from under you. And I know for myself, that's what I would describe when I first lost my brother. I felt like the ground under me was not going to hold me, that if I put my foot down, I might fall straight through. You may also start to question, what will my life look like now? How can I go on without them? And that can create a deep sense of fear and insecurity, making the grieving process feel even more daunting and overwhelming. The ripple effect caused by loss reaches far beyond the initial event. So if you think of a pond and you threw a pebble into the pond and then you see the rings that go out, that's what it's like after loss. It is not just the loss itself. It is everything else that was with that loss. It alters the dynamics of friendships and family relationships, sometimes creating strain or disconnect. It can challenge your faith or your worldview, making you wrestle with questions you might never have even thought of before or faced before. Even things that were once brought you joy or comfort may now feel hollow or tainted by the absence of the person or thing that you've lost. Ultimately, the intensity of grief lies not only in the pain of the loss itself, but in the profound changes it forces upon every part of your life. It's a time where we feel disoriented, where you're tasked with rebuilding a life that you didn't expect to live. The uncertainty and upheaval make grief feel just so relentless. But I promise you, in time, as you begin to adjust and find new meaning and grow, as I say, with your grief, this process can lead to resilience and a redefined sense of yourself. The third reason grief feels so intense is because it doesn't exist in isolation. It often brings a flood of unresolved emotions, unfinished conversations, regrets, and these feelings can make the pain of loss even more profound. They add a layer of complexity to your mourning process. You may find yourself replaying moments in your mind over and over, the woulda, coulda, shouldas, imagining what could have been different. I should have said this. Why didn't I do that? Did they know how much they meant to me? These are questions that can feel like a heavy weight or a heavy blanket is on you, and it intensifies that pain of loss. Regret in particular can be like a sharp companion in grief. It often comes up and surfaces as like a deep longing to change something in the past, like a missed phone call, an argument left unresolved, or an opportunity to express that you love them very much and how you felt about them and you let it slip by. Even in relationships that were largely positive, it's natural for the mind to dwell on imperfections when someone is gone. The finality of loss makes it feel like there's no chance to make amends or say what's in your heart, leaving an open wound that feels impossible to close. Unresolved feelings can also arise from more complex relationships. If the connection with the person you lost was strained or marked by conflict, the grief can stir up a mixture of emotions, love, guilt, anger, sadness, all at once. And the feelings can be confusing and very difficult to untangle It leaves you struggling with not only the loss itself, but also with the weight of what was left unsaid or unresolved. Even in relationships filled with love, there can be a sense of yearning for a perfect goodbye. Loss often happens suddenly or under circumstances that don't allow for this perfect goodbye. Could cause people to be yearning for one more conversation, one more hug, one more I love you, one more time to express how much you cared, one more day. This longing can be both painful and paralyzing as you grapple with the finality of a life that's ended way before you were ready to say goodbye. Grief has a way of magnifying these unresolved feelings and creating a loop of self-reflection and at times blame, self-blame. But it's important to remember that love's not defined by perfection. It's defined by connection. The imperfections in the relationship don't erase its value or its meaning. In fact, they often highlight the depth and uniqueness of that bond. No relationship is without flaws. No love story is without its complexities. Part of healing through grief is learning to make peace with the unfinished nature of life and relationships. Closure isn't about tying up every loose end. I don't actually really like the term closure because people think there's a finish line, and there's no finish line in grieving, but we can reconcile with our grief. And that can look like finding ways to carry the love that we have for them forward, despite what feels unresolved. It's about recognizing that your loved one's presence in your life matter deeply, even with the imperfections, even with the unresolved feelings and unfinished business. Unresolved feelings can make grief feel more intense because they leave you searching for answers or resolution that may never come. But in time, as you process these emotions, you can begin to shift the focus from what you woulda, coulda, should have done, what you wish you could have done differently, to the loving connection that you shared. Grief in all its intensity is a testament to the importance of those relationships, even when they're imperfect. I want to let you know that although grief feels really bad right now and the grief is so intense and it hurts, it doesn't stay this raw. It doesn't stay this way forever. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, but it's finding a way to carry your loved one's memory forward. An analogy that I like to use is grief is like a wound. It's very painful at first. It might be open and oozing, but with some care and attention to it and time, you may start to see its healing. It might scab over, but you may bump it or scrape it and the scab might rip back open again. But again, with some attention and time, it will heal. And eventually it turns into a scar, reminding you of the love you shared without causing constant pain. So the scar is there as a reminder of that love, but there's not that pain anymore. If you're feeling the weight of grief, know it's a sign of how much you cared. With time and support and self-compassion, the hurt can be more manageable. If you're looking for more support on how to navigate through the grief process, check out my workbooks and journals, Mending Piece by Piece. In the description below, you'll find a link. Until next time, continue mending piece by piece, one step at a time.